Shalom and welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. We thank you for joining us. If you'd like to touch base with us, please email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Visit the website, jewishsacredaging.com. And please also visit the Facebook page, Jewish Sacred Aging on Facebook. As many of us, most of us, or all of us on our community know, we are living in very, very difficult, challenging times with the war and how to translate the realities of that war back to our communities, as well as what is happening as a result of that in the United States of America and really around the world with the rises in anti-Semitism and changes in wholesale relationships that we thought we took for granted for many, many, many years. We are very pleased, and I thank him very, very much. He's just recently off of a plane from Israel on a mission. We welcome to today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, Rabbi David Levin, who is the founder and director of the Jewish Relationships Institute based outside of Philadelphia, member of the Board of Rabbis of Greater Philadelphia, and just off the Board of Rabbis mission to Israel. And we wanted to talk to David today about what he saw, what he felt, what his impressions are, and to be truthful, how do we translate all of that back into our own communities, regardless of where we are. So David, Baruch haba, thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope you're somewhat recovered from jet lag, in what was, and we talked a little bit about this before we went on air, what obviously was a rather momentous and very, very meaningful and powerful trip. So let me just jump right in. You were there for a very short amount of time, if I remember correctly, just less than a week, right? Less than 3 days.
Yes, 56 hours on the ground.
Okay, so you were ran all over the state. You met some unbelievable people. If you could try, I'm sure this is difficult, and try to encapsulate one image that stuck with you. What was it?
Well, there are several images that come to mind that made this so powerful a trip. I think among the very powerful images would be the images of a Shabbat table that was set outside of the Tel Aviv Museum with 240 spaces, some of which and fully set for Shabbat. So there was wine on the table, there were chalot on the table, and some of the chairs, all were empty. Every chair had a picture of a hostage that had been taken, and some of those chairs were high chairs with baby bottles, representing the children that had been kidnapped. Another extraordinary image that's sort of indelibly etched in my mind at this particular point. We were taken to we'll call it a parking lot. It was an open field that had been converted into a place for the burned out hulks of cars that, this was the smaller of the two lots. It had about 200 burned out vehicles, many of which came from the concert that was going on that horrible morning of October 7th. And the cars are completely burned out in various stages of destruction. And Zaka was there tagging the vehicles as they were able to identify human ash remains. And seeing those tags attached to the frames of the cars, it makes me well up now just thinking about it. So those are. Yeah, I'm sorry.
For people who may not be familiar with this organization, what's Zaka?
Right. Zaka is an organization of traditional observant Orthodox people whose mission is to help recover human remains so that they can be given proper burial. And they will go out and retrieve bodies or retrieve body parts. In this case, there were no body parts to retrieve. There was nothing but ash because of the intensity of the fires. So their mission is to bring whatever they can back to the families so that they can observe a proper burial. The interesting question. The nature of the work is after the fact. So you're walking through the remnants or the aftermath of devastation. So whether it, I think actually the one that I'll contrast with is I was deployed to Pittsburgh as part of the Red Cross team, and we were not allowed to go into an active crime scene, which was the Gates of Life Synagogue. Our mission, our work centered around caring for the people that remained. The difference is, of course, that we saw the crime scene. We were in the crime scene. We saw the aftermath up close and personal, from burned out cars to bullet holes and knocked out windows, to live memorials at the spot at which people actually fell. So it was a different, more intense, and if you will, a more intimate kind of an experience than what I have been previously accustomed to in a post-calamity kind of a situation.
If I remember correctly, when we talked before, you were given access to view the uncensored video that the IDF had. Is that correct?
Right. That is correct. Well, it's I can't put into words. I'm as you know, I'm pretty good with words. Rabbis truck in words. That's what we do. I can't put into words what I saw. It was grueling. It was gruesome. It was grotesque. It was beyond anything that I had personally had a chance to visit. And it was even worse than any of the films that have been released to the public. Gruesome, absolutely gruesome and unspeakably savage. And bizarre in its own way, absolutely bizarre that human beings could be doing this to other human beings and come away with, I guess the frightening thing is a sense of almost joy out of that experience, and watching them also scarily feeling like they were doing something in the name of something holy. As counterintuitive, as wrong as that would be to our mindset, you saw some of this almost orgiastic joy that was happening as these people were engaging in just brutal acts of savagery.
So you go there for 2 days, or however many hours. You see this. You walk through the fields. I remember you described to me being in a field doing some stuff with an IDF helicopter hovering above you to make sure that you're safe, and driving on a road with watching the tanks fire into a war zone. You've been home for a couple of days. How do you begin to process this? You can't compartmentalize it, can you?
You know, I wish I could. Today started at about 5:00 in the morning. And that's been more often than not. So no, I'm still in the process of trying to understand what happened and what does it mean. And those are, I think, probably two questions that need time to develop and need time to understand. And they're probably two of the most important questions that we need to be asking ourselves as we move forward. It's not my question. I went over there to bear witness. My time there was specifically designed to expose me to some of this stuff and some of the stories that come along with this stuff, from hostage survivors to survivors of murder victims, and all of the horrors that happen in war, displaced persons internally within Israel. But my job is to bring that back to our community here and try and help process it, because this is, as you and I had talked about, this is a fundamental existential exercise for the world Jewish community. This is not happening over there. As much as it's happening over there, it's also affecting us. And anti-Semitism is a very real thing. I think that this I'll call it catastrophe that happened in Israel was an indicator and an opportunity for folks to peel back what was a covering and expose raw anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism isn't limited to a geographic location. It's Jew hate. And wherever we are, we become the subject or target of that. So being here, being there, we're in this very much together, both Israeli Jew and diaspora Jew. We're confronting very similar issues, and we need to understand how we proceed forward together.
Yeah, and next week on this podcast, we recorded it earlier. There's some of the people from the local regional office of the Anti-Defamation League who monitor this, and Andrew Goretsky, who's the regional director, was mentioning the overwhelming increase in the amount of anti-Semitic calls and incidents just since October the 7th that have come into their office. Part of your rabbinate, and we've known each other for a few years, it has tried to do some work interfaith-wise, reaching out, building coalitions, building relationships, etc. Now you've come back with this and these images, and you come back to the United States and you see a lot of those people who we marched with and walked with, and they've been very, very silent, or, making statements without understanding the horror of October 7th. I'm sure you've begun to think about, how do I translate this back into the world that I'm living in, carrying with me all these. How do you begin to process this now?
Well, for starters, all of that is true. There's no question about that. But it doesn't keep us from doing the work. It gives us a heightened sense of urgency and importance to that work. And yes, I've been deeply disappointed by either silence by people that I thought were people of good faith or goodwill, and even more disappointed by the vitriol and the hatred that could come out from others. But we can't lose sight of the fact that there are many people of goodwill and people of faith who are trying to be supportive. And we need to continue to build on those relationships. I have, as you know, this is not a shameless plug, but I've been actually wearing and sharing these kippot. And it becomes a rather obvious public identifier as to who I am. I have not been accosted in a bad way since I've been wearing this. And I started wearing this about a week after the war started. I had these manufactured for us. But I have gotten a lot of people reaching out to me, just touching me on the hand, walking through Costco. I had a couple stop me right at the office chairs and said, I just want to say I'm sorry. And that has happened innumerable times. In the airport, people would stop me, not Newark rather, not Tel Aviv. But people would stop me there. I had several people on the plane. In fact, my wife was kind of marveling that we took a subsequent flight right after I came back. We were traveling elsewhere, that I had something to do. And several people on the plane as we were boarding would stop me and say, I'm so sorry. I just want to reach out and let you know you're not alone. Those are the people that we need to understand are with us, even if they may not completely agree with us. They can show empathy. They can show caring, the deep human compassion that we hold as sacred in our faith tradition. They're there. They're out there. And we cannot allow the bad experiences to taint what is our moral compass. This is a moment of real truth for us, because it's very easy to recoil from the hatred when you're exposed to it, and then suppress what is Jewish wisdom that's telling you, no, you can't hate your neighbor. No, you can't. You've got to be a light to the nations. And that means working with a moral clarity and a moral compass. And we can't sacrifice that, because then the bad guys win. And our tradition doesn't bear up under the strain, and it can bear up under the strain, but that depends on us. So we need to be able to come together. We need to be able to find support amongst ourselves, and we need to find support in those members of the greater community who understand that anti-Semitism, or more appropriately, Jew hate, has no place. Just like Muslim hate, racism, all of those things don't have a place in our civil society. And we've got to work really, really hard on that. And this is a clarion call. I think this is a pivotal moment for us as Jews in America. I think for a long time there was a lot of hope, perhaps delusion, that we were going to make it. We were, quote, white. We fit into the general socioeconomics of the culture, and we were okay. And anti-Semitism was like, that happened over there, and we got on the boat, and we were okay. We're fine here. And it turns out not so much. But it also turns out that there are people who really do buy into America as a melting pot for good. And those are the folks that we have to align with and make sure that we continue to reinforce, even to our kids, more importantly to our kids, not to be afraid to identify proudly with a tradition that stands strong in values of human compassion and decency, even if people may not treat you decently.
This is a cynical question. Do you think there's any danger 6 months from now, a year from now, when this fades into, hopefully, history? We're overwhelmed with an election campaign and all the mishigas and childishness that's going to bring. Do you think there's any danger that the bulk of the American Jewish community is going to say, well, we made it through that crisis and everything's okay?
Yeah, of course. It's not a cynical question. I think that goes to the issues of human nature. And it becomes up to us to stand up to that. I think part of the reason why we are where we are today, anti-Semitism didn't go away. I would argue that it receded into under the rug or into the cracks behind the wall. It didn't go away. And I think that we became a little bit complacent. Our Jewish identity became, it faded in its importance in terms of identity, actively embracing Jewish culture, Jewish social circles, Jewish religious circles. A lot of people are culturally or ethnically Jewish, as they would identify it, and not affiliating with institutions, particularly the legacy institutions, as you know. Part of that is our inability to make sure that the message that we offer resonates. And part of it is, we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to circle the wagons anymore. It could never happen here. And I think we believe that. And there were many reasons why it seemed like that was a reasonable assumption to make. So yeah, I do believe that, that people will, if they can, go back. We will see, I'm sure, repeats of previous historic cycles, or at least rhymes with previous historic cycles. There will be people who will actively champion what they believe in. There will be people who are going to go along to get along. There will be people who just plain old sell out. In that regard, Judaism understands we're not different from other groups in that respect, because we're dealing with human nature. So yeah, you're going to see that, Richie. And part of what we need to do is spend time with our kids, spend time with our grandchildren, foster an element of pride that it's based in a tradition that is really worth celebrating and really worth living. So if we can continue to engage that, we will reach the people that we can reach, and the people that we can't reach, we will try, but our focus needs to be on giving them the best potential experience. And I'm speaking as rabbi to rabbi, and not just rabbi to rabbi, but rabbi to everyone who understands and values the tradition that we identify with. So that's our job.
So on your trip, and you alluded to this, can you recall of all the experiences, the stories, was there one story that just reached you more than anything else, just blew you away, just transfixed you?
There were actually so many. There's one, the head of security at a place called Sdot Negev, which is just around the Gaza envelope. He was out. He heard something as head of security. He heard something via radio that something was coming down. He went out in his car to try and find out what was happening. Found approximately a caravan of 40 cars fleeing the scene of the concert. He pulled out his megaphone and yelled, "Follow me," and got people to follow him. On his radio, he learned that there was Hamas terrorists to the north. So he turned around. They tried to go in the other direction. There were Hamas terrorists who had blocked the other route. And he decided, okay, follow me. We're going into the field so we can get in the back way into the community, and we'll be safe. And 30 cars followed him. And approximately, he said there were 12 cars that did not follow him because they didn't think that the terrain would be good enough, or they thought that they could outrun whatever may or may not have been there. He went back to retrieve the bodies from all 12 cars.
Wow.
None of them made it. There are a lot of stories like that. Acts of incredible heroism. There's a reporter, a Palestinian reporter, who shared that she stayed on the phone. A friend of hers called her while they were locked in their safe room, and she saved their lives because she became the coordination between friends in the IDF and friends who were reservists who came south, and she directed them by having this ongoing conversation with this family that was essentially being held hostage inside of their own house. She was a hero. There's that woman in Ofakim who invited the terrorists into her home and served them food and kept them occupied long enough for the IDF to come in and take them out. So she and her husband were saved as a result of this extraordinary act. How she had the presence of mind to pull that off, I don't know. The fact that she did, there were several people in that community that were killed, but she saved the lives of God knows how many more because of what she did, this incredible bravery. On that note, her house, by the way, is riddled with bullet holes, as you would imagine. We were standing there and we were getting the debrief on what was going on in this community that morning. And we had this older man. Obviously, he was religious. He was he had a nice long white beard, and he was about my age. Would be my guess. And he was making noise behind us. He had 3 or 4 what looked like yeshiva buchers with him, and they were making noise. And the initial reaction, my initial reaction, was, oh, here's just an obnoxious Orthodox guy who wants to intrude on us for whatever reason, just because we're there and he doesn't think we belong. And a couple of us went over to him to find out what it was, why he was there, why he had to be in that spot doing what he was doing. And he was standing in front of the memorial where his son fell. It was Shloshim, and it was the first chance that he had to say Kaddish.
Yeah.
So that was an extraordinary moment. And it went, and I guess the boomerang effect of going from one mindset to understanding more fully what was actually happening, made it even more extraordinary. There's a lot of that. And there are, for every Israeli, there's a story associated with that day. Whether it's the people who were marching in the streets of Tel Aviv a few days before because they were anti-government and the policies that the government was trying to impose in terms of judiciary reform, they were the first guys running to the front line. This idea of coming together. The Israeli population has done an extraordinary job. There's this, one of the signs, one of the catchphrases is Yachad Nenetzach, which could be translated, or Bil Yachad Nenetzach. It could be translated, in unity we will persevere. Given what I saw in terms of the mindset of the Israelis, I think it's probably better translated, realistically translated, as together somehow we're going to get through. And everybody is trying to come together, but it's compounded by competing goals that are ill-defined at this particular point in the public eye. A level of distrust or a feeling of betrayal by the government that was supposed to be there to protect them. There's a lot of stuff going on. The question that seems to catch the headlines from the survivors is, where were you? Where were you? You promised that we could live here peaceably because you were going to protect the border and you were going to make sure we were safe. And you didn't. And we were slaughtered. So that there's a tremendous amount of stuff that's going on in the Israeli mind right now, trying to figure out how to understand what happened and what to do with it once you figured it out. And there are long ways from doing it.
We are historically a resilient people, but your gut, I'm sure you process some of this, maybe even on the plane ride home and subsequently. But crystal balling, and I know this is difficult, if not impossible, but looking forward a year from now, 2 years from now, where do you think Israel is as a result of this? We all have agreed that this is a fundamental shift Where do you think this country is?
I still think that they will be picking up the pieces. I
Really?
don't think a year from now we will have figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, October 7th was a turning point, and the Israel that we thought we knew no longer exists. What it will become, I don't know. I think that there is, on many levels, an absolute level of disgust for the slaughter, the bloodshed, the unresolvable enmity between two peoples. There are a lot of people who don't find that as discomforting as others, but I think the center and the left will assert itself in ways that it had probably ceded a lot of its political influence through voting over the years, being comfortable economically and thinking that there was a security and military superiority, and that the other side was not so sophisticated and couldn't possibly pull something like this off. But indeed, here
They
we
did.
are. They did, and it's incredibly sobering. I do think that there has to be a reckoning and a fundamental reevaluation of what it is that Israel is. What does Israel stand for?
Do you think the American Jewish community will rally around this? Or do you think that there will be some people who say, who will leave the community because they're scared because of this interest in anti-Semitism? I mean, none of us
Well,
can answer that. We don't know, but I'm asking your
yeah,
opinion.
yes. Look, people have left for a variety of reasons. I guess rhinoplasty wouldn't be as popular otherwise. And I'm not trying to be cute, but the idea that we could fit in, that we could blend into something else. And I don't want to hearken back to another very dark time, but the Nuremberg laws made it very, very clear that there are ways to find out whether you want to admit publicly or not as to your Jewish background. We can know. And
And there are people who right now talking about reemerging some of that, but it's in code language. But if you know
right.
history, and read history, it's not, it's code language, but we know what really the code is for.
We do. And we can sugarcoat it. We can try and give it a different kind of a wrapper. But the bottom line is that the message remains the same. So it's up to those of us who are willing to stand up for what we believe in. I am deeply, deeply aligned with the concept of Israel. I love what it is supposed to be, and it's aspirational. In many ways, it falls terribly short of where it should be, but I can still love it and work to improve it. I am likewise a patriotic American. I love this country deeply. It did give us a place to go and give us opportunities unparalleled in our history for so long. And the idea of the rule of law, the idea of democracy, again, in many respects, the United States of America is aspirational as well. But that's why I'm committed to the political process to try and continue to champion the things that I believe in, to make equality and justice and liberty things that stand out. That is, we can embrace this as our challenge, or we can run away from it and pretend, and maybe you'll get away with that. But it doesn't mean that the ugly and the hatred went away. It just meant that you escaped it in the moment.
Well, it's very interesting, frightening, but true. Whether you are in the land of Israel or in the land of the United States, elections have consequences. And when you have to live with those consequences, that hopefully send that message that you're talking about. But vigilance but again, what you were talking about, the pride of who we are and our people and our ability to survive even in the darkest of times, and to celebrate that. I think that is a message.
And to love something despite the fact that it's flawed. So I'll add a little bit more to that. I used the phrase Yachad Nenetzach earlier. Yachad Nenetzach really isn't the rallying cry just for the Israeli community. Yachad Nenetzach is the rallying cry for world Jewry. This is the opportunity for us to understand that we are all in this together, and we can determine how we move forward together.
On that very important note and hopeful truth, let me thank you, Rabbi David Levin, for sharing your experience and your message, ultimately a message of hope in these very, very dark times. So thank you, David. Welcome back. Hopefully you can get some rest and continue the good work that you're doing here in the local area and nationally as well. And I will see you soon, I hope. I hope so.
I look forward to it, and I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, because there is, with all of this stuff, we still have much to be grateful for.
So get those leftovers. So to all of you, thank you very, very much for giving us your time and sharing that time with us today on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to help us continue this work, if you go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and click on the donate button, we appreciate anything you can do. And for those of you who'd like to sponsor some of these podcasts, just please email me at rabbi address at jewishsacredaging.com, and we'll take it from there. Seekers of Meaning is produced in the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin. Many companies in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a sincere and wonderful thank you to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us today. It is a very, very challenging time, and we really do appreciate you being with us, and look forward to seeing you again on the next Seekers of Meaning. In the meantime, just take care of yourself, stay healthy, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Shalom.